Hi again. Now we're going to talk about strategic alignment, which is really the first flavor of what this course is about. Now we move into the specific topic that this course is designed to cover, which is strategic alignment and the connection between business and product management, and the connection between the business and the product itself. Right? So let's jump in. When you're talking about strategic alignment or alignment in general, you could be discussing three things or three forms, one could say, of alignment. Uh, these are clearly divided in your textbook as well into three different chapters, but so this is just an introduction and a small start of that. If you look at things like strategic alignment, that deals with looking at the organizational objectives. What do we want to accomplish with our organization, right? We talked about objective previously, so you should know what that is by now. And how well do the projects that we run and the objectives we set out for these projects align with the organization's general objectives, right? The idea here is that whatever we do in the projects, the objectives we set up for each project should add and contribute to us reaching our organizational objectives. That's what we want to ensure. Okay? When you look at the organizational alignment, we look more at things like the resources that we use in the project and that they align with the other resources used inside your organization, inside the business process, research, and operations. So that we have, for example, a type of resources inside our organization that are useful for projects, that the resources we have in projects integrate and is or can be used throughout the organization, and so on and so forth. And then we have process alignment, which basically means that whatever we do in the project, the way we work, needs to be in line or interface with the business process that's around us inside the organization. Okay, so these are the basic three things that we need to kind of take into consideration and work with when we talk about strategic alignment. All right, one interesting thing that the author brings up that you could talk at great length about is conflicts and strategic alignment, right? There's no mystery that alignment in itself requires structure. You need to have a certain way of doing things, a certain way of approaching it. You need to have a certain structure and rigor around how you start projects, how you run projects, and how you manage projects. The important part here is to make sure that this structure or rigor does not reduce creativity and competition, and in one sense also conflicts. And this is the interesting discussion, really, that you have to make sure that there is some what's called positive conflict throughout the organization. There's basically two types of conflicts. One is disruptive and one is positive. The disruptive one is obviously bad. It's when it's too much conflict. It's when it's conflict around the wrong things. But positive conflict would be where we do not agree. We have healthy discussions. We try and solve problems where we reach better solutions and better conclusions just because of the fact that we had a conflict in the beginning or we weren't in agreement, right? Because most organization, a certain level of conflict is good. That's really what makes an organization change and develop. So we have to make sure that we do not, in our effort to structure and to make things aligned, do not take away the room for creativity, competition, and in some cases conflicts as well. All right, so if you look at strategic alignment or alignment in general, there are a bunch of things that are kind of necessary for this to be successful or to be even doable. And if you take a look at these, the book explains them in greater details, but there needs to be balanced and comprehensive objectives. It needs to cover our whole business idea. It can't just be objectives surrounding one of the areas we do business in, because then by definition the portfolio is going to be unbalanced, right? It needs to cover all aspects of our daily business life. And it needs to be specific and, more importantly, durable objectives. Since this is something that's rather long term, these objectives are going to change over time, but they have to stand the test of time in the short time frame at least. If we change our organizational objectives all the time, it's going to be really hard to have a portfolio that's aligned with those objectives, right? Because then we have to change the types of products we run all the time as well. Okay. There needs to be some sort of hierarchical framework. There needs to be an idea about what objectives are more important than others. We can't just have a situation where all objectives are exactly the same, because then it's hard for us to prioritize. So that needs to be taken into consideration as well. We need to be able to measure these objectives. When have we reached an objective? Are we able to measure continuously during execution what happens to these objectives, right? How that is measured, that's a different story. That could be quite complicated, but there needs to be some sort of measurement saying that, okay, in order for us to reach this objective, we must achieve a certain percentage of this or that, right? There needs to be stakeholder agreement. We need to be in agreement, the owners, the board, and the CEO, etc., etc., that these are the objectives that we are going to follow, and these are the objectives we're going to use. Because if the high-level management is not in agreement around these objectives, then again, we might be in a situation where we do not have durable objectives, because they might change for political reasons or for reasons where people are in conflict and one side wins or the other side wins, right? And we need to have a clear view of what our organizational and environmental assumptions are. With environment here, we mean the thing around us, business, the environment we do business in, for example, that influences us, but we can't really control it. And what do we assume about that? What's the development in this area going to be the next couple of years, and so on. Okay, so these were some of the conditions of success, the more important ones. Like I said, I read the textbook on this as well, and maybe look online to see if you're interested to read more about the various concepts. All right, so a couple of roles we need to take into consideration as well before we venture into this in more detail. One is called portfolio designer, and basically this role works with executive management to look at how do we select projects, what's the procedure for starting and selecting projects. Also take these objectives and kind of translate them into projects and programs. We have objectives we want to accomplish. Now let's see, okay, what type of products do we need? What type of programs do we need to put in place to reach this? Also look at organizational risk. How can we spread it out over our whole portfolio so that we kind of work with the risk management of things. If we have our products that's really risky, we might want to start or have other products that are less risky, just to make sure, or maybe divide that product up so that we spread out the risk throughout our whole portfolio. And also see that we do not have peaks. We need to balance the use of time and resources, because like you're probably aware of, all organizations are built around the standard workload, not the peaks. There's no company that can afford to kind of build their organization, the number of people they have, based on the peaks of work, right? So we need to make sure that we spread out the work and the resources over time, right? So that we do, for example, we don't get all the work right before Christmas in all projects. We might want to consider spreading that out a little bit. And they also look at how to ensure that we measure things, that we track things, that we adjust things. We need to have a process or a method for doing that, and that's part of the portfolio designer's work as well. All right. Then we have the product designer, who is basically in charge of developing the business cases for projects or for programs, um, doing the hands-on alignment of what we ask of the products we do start and how they connect to the organizational objectives. Also working with product managers to, make estimates reasonably accurate, make the quality of the products we run higher, and so on. But also how we can take projects or results of projects and integrate those into what we already do. If we have a portfolio with a set of projects and we want to start something new, how do we integrate that into that portfolio and make sure that we do not get peaks in time, make sure that we work in a certain way, to make sure that we align with all the various things we want to align with, and so on. All right, so last but not least, before we move into the next topic, we're going to talk about the balanced portfolio itself. There's basically three things you got to think about here. That we need to have some sort of prioritization or hierarchy of some sort. Some products are important than others. If you're faced with a decision, where do we focus the resources, we have to be able to look at a prioritization or a hierarchy of products and say, okay, well, that product is more important than another, so let's focus on the one that's most important. All right. And also scheduling. Not so much scheduling in products, rather scheduling of projects. When do we plan to do a certain project? When does it fit in time from a resource perspective most of the time? And also, how do we select projects? Which one do we do and which one do we reject? That's an important question as well that needs to be addressed. And this is really what these coming chapters will talk about. The various approaches and the various ways that we would work with these and how we approach this. The next couple of recordings are going to be touching upon the bigger aspects of these. I'm not going to go into all the nitty-gritty details of everything. The book does a really good job of explaining all of these, so you can read that on your own. I'm going to pick out a couple of things that I feel are interesting from each chapter as well.